In the first 8 seconds, I need you to imagine this. A stone corridor beneath a Carolina tobacco barn. No sound, no wind, no life, except for the echo of something metal being dragged across the floor. Something that was never meant to see the light again. Something built for a purpose no ordinary man would dare speak aloud. That's where our story begins. In a place the world pretended never existed. A place so effective at controlling human minds that not a single enslaved woman ever attempted escape. For 15 consecutive years. Understand what that means. At a time when the Underground Railroad stretched like a lifeline across the South. At a time when men risked dogs, bullets, and death for even the chance of freedom, Fair Haven Plantation remained silent, motionless, obedient. Not a single woman ran, not one, and men 12 of them did. They fled into the swamps, the marshlands, the night, but the women stayed, every single one. Now tell me, does that sound like coincidence? Does that sound like contentment? Or does it sound like control? The kind of control that doesn't come from chains or threats, but from something deeper, a system that preys on psychology, biology, and the quiet terror of what happens in the dark. When no one believes your suffering exists, Fair Haven was not the largest plantation. It wasn't the richest. It wasn't even the most brutal on record. No, its power came from something far more subtle. A method designed by a man obsessed with improvement, bloodlines, and the idea that human beings could be shaped like livestock, perfected through selective pressure, engineered into profitable patterns of obedience. For 15 years, this system held. It held so tightly that when abolitionists recorded escapees, when newspapers printed advertisements for runaways, when entire families vanished into the night, the women of Fair Haven stayed rooted to a place that treated their bodies like currency. And then, in 1862, for the first time, something shifted, something cracked, something they discovered beneath that eastern tobacco barn, broke the spell, shattered the silence, and snapped the psychological framework that kept them in place. What they found down there was not a rumor, not superstition, not plantation folklore. It was a structure, a purpose-built chamber, a machine of human intention, a cella, a design older than America, hidden beneath a barn in South Carolina. And once the women saw it, everything changed. They say the most dangerous truths are the ones hidden in plain sight, and Fair Haven was built on a truth so old, so quietly practiced, that even the men who enforced it didn't fully understand the machinery they served. When Dr. Samuel Brennan arrived at the plantation in March of 1862, he expected the usual filth of bondage, the cruelty, the hypocrisy, the economic desperation. But what struck him first was the order. Every movement of the enslaved women calculated, every expression muted, every gesture rehearsed, as if they were following a script written in fear. Yet that fear was not the panicked kind. It was colder, more internal, the kind of fear that rewires the mind, until captivity feels like the only safe place left. As the overseer, Harold Gaines, led Brennan across the grounds, he spoke with the casual transparency of a man who had no idea how monstrous his own words sounded. Rutledge started with 6 prime women, he explained, as fine as you'll find anywhere, each of them proven. He tracked everything: birth cycles, constitutions, pairings, did it all scientific-like. Said he could breed out weakness entirely. Brennan nodded, but inside, something tightened. The language was familiar. This was proto-eugenics, the quiet seed of an ideology that would grow into horrors far beyond the Civil War. Gaines continued. Most plantations buy new stock every few years. Not here. Fair Haven grows its own. Stronger every generation. Never had a failure. That word failure sickened Brennan. But he didn't break character. They approached the eastern tobacco barn. Older than it should have been, larger than any crop demanded. Its boards were warped by humidity, but this foundation was too smooth, too deliberate, too heavy for a simple barn. This is where Mr. Rutledge kept the records, Gaines said. Where he charted improvements, kept the girls when they were expecting, took real good care of them, comparatively speaking, wanted the conditions just right. The phrasing landed like a whisper of something darker. Conditions just right. Brennan felt a chill trace his spine. What kind of conditions? He asked. Gaines smirked, tapping the key against his leg. You'll see. Best stock in the Lowcountry doesn't happen by accident. The key slid into the lock. The latch groaned. The doors opened inward, and Brennan realized, even before he stepped inside, that whatever lay beneath this barn was not meant for daylight, and never meant for truth. Come on, Gaines said. There's more below. The interior of the tobacco barn was dim, but strangely clean. Too organized for a building meant only for drying leaves. Brennan scanned the space, noting details that didn't belong. A ledger table, hooks for lanterns, reinforced beams, and in the far corner, a trapdoor bracketed with iron. Gaines noticed his gaze. Mr. Rutledge didn't like interruptions, he said. Kept the important things below. Records, instruments, training space. The casualness of that last phrase, training space, hit Brennan like a blow. He stepped closer. The air shifted, cooler near the floorboards. Something old was breathing beneath them. Go on, Gaines gestured. You wanted the full operation. He pulled aside the wooden latch and lifted the trapdoor. A breath of cold, stale air drifted upward. Air from a place designed to stay hidden. A staircase descended at a steep angle, built of stone, not lumber. Stone. No Lowcountry barn sat atop stone foundations. This was constructed deliberately like a cellar or a vault. Brennan took the lantern and followed Gaines downward, each step echoing with a weight that felt older than the plantation itself. As they reached the bottom, the floor opened into a corridor, walls carved smooth with a precision that did not match the rest of the estate. Foundations go way back, Gaines muttered. Rutledge said the first builders used this as storage. Some say it was here before the house was. But Brennan saw the truth immediately. This was no storage space. This was architecture with purpose. Purpose that predated the plantation, and had been repurposed into something even more calculated. Gaines continued, This is where we keep the logs. Bloodlines. Productivity. Never lost a woman down here. They behave perfect once they understand. Understand. The word churned. What exactly do they understand? Brennan asked quietly. Gaines gave the smallest shrug. That this place is safer than running. That what's above ground don't matter as much as what's chosen for him. That families get broken anywhere else but here. Here they're part of a system. A system, not a home, not a community. A system engineered to condition obedience through design, ritual, repetition. It wasn't just breeding. It was behavioral shaping, a psychological mechanism centuries ahead of its time. As Brennan followed the corridor, the air thickened. He felt the weight of countless lives shaped in this underground geometry. And then, as they reached the final archway, Gaines tapped the lantern glass and said, This is the cella, where it all begins. He pushed open the last door. The door opened with a low, resonant groan. Not the sound of wood on hinges, but of something heavier, something that had been sealed and unsealed countless times, each opening marking another entry in a history no one was meant to read. The room beyond was circular, not square like a storage cellar, not rectangular like a barn foundation. Circular, a shape used for rituals of control long before plantation economics ever existed. A shape meant to center human attention, reshape perception, and train obedience. The lantern light spilled across stone walls marked by faint white lines. Grids, measurements, height records, symbols. Brennan recognized the meaning instantly. This was a calibration chamber, a place where human bodies had been evaluated, compared, catalogued. Not violently, but clinically, with the cold precision of a man who believed he was improving nature. Gaines stepped confidently inside, as though entering a workshop. Stand anywhere you like, he said. They used to line up right there. He pointed to a faint groove etched into the floor. A single line. A place where generations had been told to stand, told to wait, told to accept whatever improvement meant here. Brennan knelt, running his fingers across the stone. Centuries of pressure had smoothed the groove. This wasn't new. Whatever this room had been before slavery, Rutledge had simply repurposed it. Where did he learn this? Brennan asked. Gaines shrugged. He traveled. Read a lot. Said certain old cultures knew how to breed strength, loyalty, discipline. Said it was all just application. Put the right women in the right mindset. Give them the right expectations, the right promises, and they stay. No trouble. Never had one try to run. There it was. The truth behind the 15-year silence. Not just physical control, but psychological architecture. Ritualized, repeated, refined. Show me the records, Brennan said. Gaines crossed to a stone shelf and pulled a series of ledgers, their leather cracked, their pages swollen with moisture. Inside, dates, pairings, outcomes, notations, patterns, families mapped like bloodlines of prized animals. But beneath the cold data was something worse. Notations about compliance, temperament, which stories calmed the women, which rituals kept them rooted, which beliefs made them stay. It wasn't the chains that held them. It was the narrative, a crafted identity, a psychological cage. And as Brennan read, he felt an unease settle into his bones. This was more than history. This was a blueprint, the kind of blueprint powerful institutions still use today, to shape populations without them ever realizing it. Halfway down the ledger, his lantern flickered, and that's when he saw the final entry before the system collapsed. A single word. Discovery. Brennan stared at that single word. Discovery. Written with a trembling hand so unlike the confident entries before it. Everything above it was meticulous, calculated, certain. But this line carried fear. What was discovered? Brennan asked. Gaines adjusted his stance, suddenly less comfortable. Well, that depends on who you ask. He took the lantern back, illuminating the far wall. A portion of stone that didn't match the rest. Smoother, newer, replaced. Had a collapse down here once, Gaines said. Women found something they weren't meant to see. Place changed after that. He tried to brush past it casually, but Brennan caught the tremor in his voice. What did they find? Gaines hesitated. The first hesitation since Brennan had arrived. Doesn't matter now. We sealed it. But Brennan knew better. The overseer wasn't hiding plantation secrets. He was hiding his own fear of whatever lay behind that patched stone. He ran his hand across the wall. Too smooth, too deliberate, as if something had been carved out or removed. You don't need to know what was there, Gaines muttered. Women got ideas, started talking different, started looking at each other like they shared something. A shared truth, a shared realization, a shared identity. And that, Brennan understood, was the real danger to systems built on control. Not rebellion, not violence. Awakening. Because once a population realizes the story holding them in place is artificial, the cage dissolves, even if the bars are still standing. And that's something you, listening right now, need to understand about every system that shapes your life.
Gouvernement, corporation, institution, influencé.
They don't need chains. They only need narratives, identities, roles you accept without questioning. And breaking that spell is the beginning of transformation. So right now, if you've followed this descent this far, if you feel something shifting inside you, drop this phrase in the comments twice. I do not inherit the stories built to contain me. I do not inherit the stories built to contain me. Write it, feel it, anchor it. Because men who can rewrite their identity are men no system can own. Brennan stepped back from the wall. What did they see? He repeated. Gaines swallowed. He looked at the sealed stone as though it might answer for him. Finally, he said quietly, they found what was here long before us, and it changed everything. The lantern flame wavered as if sensing something beneath the surface. Some old presence, older than the plantation, older than the men who claimed dominion over it. Brennan pressed his palm to the patched wall again. Even through the stone, the air felt different, less like a cellar, more like a chamber designed for watching. What was here before Fair Haven? Brennan asked. Gaines stiffened. Don't start that. Rutledge warned us not to dig into history that ain't ours. That line, history that ain't ours, carried a weight Brennan couldn't ignore. Because the South wasn't the first to shape human lives through hierarchy. Every empire had done it.
Rome.
Babylon. Imperial courts. Yet the architecture down here didn't match any plantation blueprint. It matched something far older. Women found a passage, Gaines admitted reluctantly. Storm one night flooded part of the cellar. Ground gave way. They were down here unattended. Found a room behind this wall. Describe it.
No.
Gaines shook his head. It ain't right. After they went in, they came back different. Quiet. Focused. Looked at us like they finally saw the truth of things. Not the truth we told them, but the truth we tried to keep from him. Brennan felt the shift. This wasn't about breeding. This wasn't about obedience. This was about knowledge. The kind institutions fear more than rebellion. What did they say was in the room? Gaines hesitated. Searches for courage. Finds none. They said the walls were carved. He swallowed. With stories older than scripture. Stories about how people get controlled. Stories about cycles. About bloodlines. About how every system repeats itself under different names. He wiped sweat from his brow. One of the women said, "They didn't build this place for us. They built it for the ones who came before. And it don't matter the century. Men in power always come back to the same design." So that was it. The collapse didn't threaten the plantation. The knowledge inside that room threatened the entire idea of the plantation. Because once someone sees the blueprint of control, they stop being part of it. And that's why, for the first time in 15 years, the women decided to run. Not because they feared the overseer. Not because they feared punishment. But because they finally understood the pattern. And refused to participate. Brennan stepped back, breath slowing. "What happened to the room?" he asked. Gaines stared at the wall. "We sealed it," he whispered. "But sealing knowledge don't unsee it." For centuries, the villagers spoke of the thing beneath the hollow mountain as a god. But gods give life. This one took it. When the expedition's lanterns flickered and went out, it wasn't because of the wind. It was because something in that chamber wanted to see their faces in the dark. A pale, crawling mist seeped along the cavern floor, moving with purpose, not drifting with air. Dr. Archelaus whispered the words he had copied from the burial tablet. "He who breathes last, breathes longest." At first it made no sense, until the explorers realized the truth. The mist wasn't fog. It was exhalation, the rhythmic, pulsing breath of something massive sealed beneath rock, ritual, and time itself. Their lanterns ignited again by themselves. The chamber was now fully illuminated, and the explorers saw shapes that hadn't been there minutes before. Tall stone figures, arched backs, hollow eyes, only they weren't statues. Every figure was a fossilized human, mouths open in silent screams, each one preserved mid-inhale. As if something had sucked the breath out of their souls and then displayed them like warnings. One of the explorers stepped closer, Raina, the youngest. She touched a figure's cheek. It flaked away like dusted ash. The ground trembled. The mist shuddered. Then, from the deepest crack in the stone floor, the shape of a ribcage shifted. A ribcage the size of an entire cathedral. It wasn't alive, no flesh, no muscle, just an impossible skeleton curled into an unnatural spiral. Yet it somehow still breathed. Every inhale pulled the mist inward. Every exhale spread it outward like the aftershock of a whispered curse. A god? No, not anymore. Something much older. Something that was supposed to stay dead. Then it spoke. Not with words. With memory. Every explorer heard something unique, a voice from their past. A regret. A fear. But the message was always the same. Trade breath for knowledge. And then, it offered them visions. Visions of ancient rites, of kings who bowed to the thing beneath the earth, of priests who carved their lungs from their chests as offerings, of empires built on stolen breath, stolen life, stolen memory. The explorers recoiled. But Reyna, she didn't step back. She stepped closer. The colossal skeleton surged with a single monstrous breath.
Lantern flames bent sideways.
Dust lifted from the floor, and Reyna, still reaching toward the ribcage, did not scream, did not run, did not resist, as her breath was gently, almost lovingly pulled from her lungs. She collapsed, peaceful, eyes open, as if she had seen something too beautiful to fear. Her last whisper, "He showed me the beginning." In that moment, the surviving explorers finally understood the curse. The entity didn't kill to feed, killed to teach. Every life taken became another memory added to its impossible intellect. A library built from stolen breaths. And now, with the failed expedition standing before it, the ancient god's bones expanded, the chamber darkened, and the mist began rushing forward again, choosing its next sacrifice. The cavern trembled like a beast waking from a centuries-long nightmare. Dust rained from the ceiling. The explorers stumbled back, shielding their faces as the mist the breath swallowed the floor. The ancient skeleton uncoiled, bone scraping bone, echoing like millstones grinding souls. This was no chamber. It was a lung, a living tomb, a spirit engine built to inhale the memories of humanity one breath at a time. And the mountain was about to exhale. Half blind, half mad with panic, the survivors bolted for the passage they came through. But the tunnel had changed. What was once a single narrow corridor had become a labyrinth of twisting stone shifting, rearranging itself with each pulse of the god's breath. The mountain didn't want them to escape. It wanted them to learn. Dr. Archelaus shouted for anyone to follow his voice, but even his words broke apart in the air, scattered by the roiling mist into echoes that argued with themselves. The explorers heard no, felt a voice rumble inside their ribs. The first breath was mine. The last breath will be mine. You are children choking on borrowed air. The truth slammed into them like a falling star. Humanity did not invent breath. It inherited it from this thing, beneath the world, that once breathed the sky into being. And now, it wanted it back. The entity's skeleton arched upward, scraping the cavern's peak. 1,000 cracks glowed with a faint inner light like veins carrying molten memory. From the mist, Reyna's voice echoed. Not her living voice, her after voice. Let it take one of you, only one, or it will take all. Archelaus froze. He understood the inscription. He understood the ritual. To leave the mountain alive, they had to give it a breath willingly. Not stolen, but offered. A trade, pact, a sacrifice. And he knew exactly who it wanted. Another explorer, Jade, panicked. He lunged for the exit, pushing Archelaus down. And that was enough. The mountain inhaled. Jade's scream was swallowed. His lungs emptied in a single pull. His life, memories, and regrets drifted into the bones like drifting embers feeding a furnace. But the mountain wasn't satisfied. A forced sacrifice wasn't a true one. It wanted consent. Archelaus, trembling, bleeding, broken, stood before the impossible skeleton. He placed a hand on a colossal rib. Cold, dry, ancient. He whispered, "Take mine, but let my people breathe." The mountain paused. The mist stilled. The chamber exhaled, soft as a sigh of approval. Then, a gentle pull. Not violent, not cruel, but absolute. Archelaus's breath drifted from his lips like a shimmering thread, unraveling the last of his life into the hungry ribs of the forgotten god. He fell gracefully, eyes open, dreaming of skies. The surviving explorers fled upward as the cavern brightened. Stone pathways straightened. The exit revealed itself, not because they were clever, but because the mountain allowed it. When they emerged into daylight, gasping for the air they'd taken for granted their entire lives, they understood something else. The mountain was breathing again, slowly, awakening, remembering, because now it had not just life, but permission. And in the wind drifting across the valley, they heard a whisper carried on the world's oldest breath. The first breath was mine, and the last will be too.